After some new developments in the Clinical Research Associate Interview series, I am speaking about this after the intro, where they had emailed me after the interview wanting me to speak with another person on the interview team. They claimed it was somebody that I was supposed to meet on the actual day of the interview, but for some reason I couldn't meet that person. So they set up an additional Skype interview for me to meet with them. So after the intro, we'll go over my experience with that. Hey guys, so just got done not too long ago with that Skype interview, and this was a little unexpected because they had mentioned it kind of offhand at the end of the day interview, the 2-3 hour long interview, that there might be one other interview I would have with a person. And I didn't really think much of it. They said it was going to be a Skype or a phone interview. So later on after that interview, they said, hey, they wanted a decision by Friday. I had the actual interview on Monday. And so on Tuesday, the recruiter messages me, hey, we want to set up that other interview that we talked about as a Skype interview. And so naturally, having to go into the office at the job I was working at the time, naturally you have to, make time if it's going to be a Skype interview or a phone interview. Phone interview is going to be a lot easier because, I can just go into the car. I can just, go into a conference room, talk on the phone. No problem. That's not going to look weird at all. But for a Skype interview, you can't show up to the office in a full suit and not expect anyone to ask questions. You can't do that in a conference room and not expect anyone to ask questions. So that's something where, I just go home. Luckily, I don't live too far away from the office. So I gave them some times that would work. The person originally wanted to meet at 11 a.m. There's no way that's going to happen in the middle of the day, especially with, meetings and monitoring calls scheduled all around that time. No way that was going to work. So I ended up scheduling for 4 p.m. I said, hey, I've got 4 p.m. I can do, sometime in the middle of the day on Thursday, if that works. They didn't want Thursday. They wanted it to happen on Wednesday so they could make the decision by Friday. So we did it on Wednesday. 4 p.m. came around and we did it at 4 p.m. And I even told them in the response email that I'd have more flexibility if we did a phone interview. And, it seemed like the scheduling was really hard, but, we made it 4:00 on that Wednesday. So Wednesday arrives, I'm at work. I'm starting to get a little nervous because I don't want to get close to the 4 o'clock time and still be at work. I live about 15 minutes from the office, so I know it's going to take me about 15 minutes to get home. So I leave work at about 3:20. I rush out the office. I get in my car, get home about 3:43-ish. So 23, yeah, it takes a few minutes to get to your car. So I get home about 3:23-ish, and 3:43-ish, and that's pretty good. Maybe I even get there a little bit earlier, like 3:40. But anyway, I have time, put on my suit really quick, and for this interview, I just put on like my white shirt, my tie, and my suit jacket. That's all I put on this time, especially because it can get hot in the room where I do the interviews. So I do that. I get on there. She gets on at 4, and with these interviews, it's hard to sometimes get the equipment to work right or whatever. But so we juggled with that for a couple minutes. Then the interview started, and I could tell as soon as she logged on, there was something about her. As soon as her little picture came up first, as soon as she called in, I knew this was going to be difficult. I knew this was going to be a difficult interview. And I just knew it. I felt it. I said, oh my gosh. As soon as her picture showed up, I just knew it was going to be difficult. And she started off, she was like, hey, looking at your resume here, and, asked me like a general, not even like a general question, because everyone pretty much started with, take me through your resume. So I thought that's what she was going to ask, take me through your resume. No, she asked something else. she asked like what is she, something about like, something about tell me about some monitoring experience or something like that. And I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, typically those type of questions, I mean, I know my resume backwards and forwards. I know my experience backwards and forwards. So, that's not really going to get under me too bad. So answer that question, give a pretty good answer, pretty good to okay answer. And she's satisfied with that. Then she asked me this question where it's like, okay, so we're bringing you in for a clinical research associate role, but would you be disappointed if you're doing some administrative work? Like, let's say, it's toward the end of a study and we're preparing it for FDA submission, and we have to do a lot of administrative work like TMF and stuff like that. Would you be disappointed if, you're not on the road monitoring? And I told her, I thought I gave a good answer to this. I said, I know that's all part of the process. I'm familiar with that process. I know towards the end of studies, a lot of people would be doing administrative work. I gave like a pretty diplomatic answer. That's basically the gist of my answer. And then for some reason she was not satisfied with that answer. I thought that was a good answer. And she basically asked that question again. She was like, yeah, but would you be disappointed? And at this point I'm like, and she like kind of reiterates the question. She was like, would you be disappointed if, we hired you to be a CRA and do the monitoring aspect and, travel? Would you be disappointed if you were in-house travel, if you're not traveling and we put you on a, doing these admin tasks in-house? And I said, I think anyone would be disappointed if, they were hired to do something and it's not being done. But I understand that that's part of the clinical trial process to, sometimes you have to do some administrative work and get stuff right for the FDA and, get documents in the TMF. I should have added that, I have a lot of experience with that. So I feel like I'd be an asset to the team if that was the case. But I also know that, hey, like, that's part of the process. And I know in the future I would be doing monitoring because, eventually you're going to be doing some startup. Eventually you're going to be doing some maintenance. Eventually you're going to be doing some closeout. So I know that is part of the process. And eventually, she kind of bought that. She didn't ask again, but I was kind of shocked that she like followed up with that kind of question. Like I said, as soon as I saw this lady, I knew she was going to be difficult, but I thought I gave some good responses. And then she went on to ask a couple more behavioral questions, and none of the questions that other people asked. They were all different behavioral questions. Like the other people I interviewed with a couple days before, if you go listen to that part 1, a couple days before, they all asked questions. They might have had a little variation there, but I kind of used the same stories throughout. And, she asked a couple behavioral questions. Then she just threw in a technical question here. What is an SAE? And I was not expecting that at all because we were talking behavioral. So I'm expecting another behavioral type question. What are you going to do in this situation? Then she fires at me, what is an SAE? And of course I know what an SAE is. I mean, I deal with these things, not regularly, but I deal with them from time to time. And I know it's any like untoward event where, the patient either has to go to the hospital or has some kind of serious event like a cardiac arrest or, anything like that, thromboembolism or something like that. I know what an SAE is. They either go to the hospital or die or something serious like that. But for some reason, this really throws me off. And I like kind of pause for like a second. And I say, basically, the patient needs to go to a hospital or they die. And, she accepts that. And that's not the best answer, but I think it's passable. But, this is like the classic thing where like anyone who, let's say you majored in clinical research, you're probably going to be able to spit a book definition of that at any time. Okay. But in practice, I know what to look for when there are SAEs out there. I know how to determine if something is an SAE or not when a study coordinator is talking or something like that. Or when the study coordinator asks me, is this an SAE? Do I need to report this to safety? But for some reason, when she asks that, just out of the blue, and it's complete BS because in any situation, you're going to be able to look it up if you're unsure. But of course, in an interview, they're going to hold everything they're going to hold everything to you. So that one was kind of weird. Then she comes back with, what is an IND safety report? And I'm like, oh my God, this is one of those interviews. And keep in mind, this is a position, this is a CRA position, but this is one where they're going to be training you. This is not one where they're going to throw you out on the road. This is a training position where they're going to take someone in with just a little bit of clinical research experience. I have much more than a little bit at this point, but they're taking in someone with a little bit of clinical research experience, and they're going to, train them to do whatever, train them to do the job. But she asked me, what is an IND safety report? Now, I don't know, like they were just so hell bent on me interviewing with this lady that I have no idea, what kind of sway she has or what kind of clout she has. But, I kind of mumble and bumble. Like there was like a decently long pause, maybe like a 2 or 3 second long pause. And I'm kind of like, fumbling on it. And eventually I'm like, okay, the site sends the report to the IRB, and usually the sponsor has some kind of safety box where they submit the report to. And she's like, yeah, the IND safety report is blah, 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 blah. I don't even remember what she says, but I'm just, in my head, I'm just like, oh, fuck. If she asks me a bunch of more questions, I am fucked. So, the interview takes a turn for the worse at that moment. And then, she says her little spiel on what IND safety report is. And then I reiterate, and then like at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, typically, the sites will send it to the IRB, like you said. And then, there's usually some kind of safety box that the sponsor has, and we'll tell them to submit it there also. And then, she seemed okay with that response, but I feel like I had already gotten an X mark for that question. Now keep in mind, this is interview 7 at this point. I've already had the recruiter screen, which was a real interview. That was not some like pansy little screen. That was a real interview. So I had the recruiter screen. I've had a Skype interview. That's number 2. I've had 4 interviews in person. So that's 6 already I've completed into this point. And then I had 7 with that lady. That is a lot of interviews for an entry-level position. Most times it's a recruiter screen, a phone screen, and then maybe you meet with 3 people on site or less. Or it could be, a phone screen plus a Skype interview plus an hour for an on-site interview. That's it. So I've met with 7 people already at the end of this. And this is like, if this one lady, after the other 6 people just ruin my chances, I'm going to be pissed. Because I got through all of the other people. And I mean, I'm not going to lie. I bodied the other people. I bodied those interviews. Like, there was nothing negative about those interviews. Like, I can tell they were definitely liking me. They were definitely enjoying my answers and things of that nature. I think I'm pretty good with the behavioral questions. But wow. I think, and I was like, man, if this one lady, ruins it for me, I'm going to be so devastated. But man, so we continue on. So she goes back to some behavioral questions, and, she asks them, I mean, I don't think there was anything really memorable from those, just the normal behavioral questions, like, describe a time with this. Oh, then she asks these weird questions like, tell me a time, tell me your biggest creative professional achievement. And I was like, she was like, no, it was just basically like, tell me your biggest creative achievement. And I was like, do you mean like professional or just like in life? She was like, either or. And so I basically like tell her this crazy story about like, I'm not going to give too much of the details away because it might like, I guess you might know some of these people, but basically there was an office contest we had, and we like incorporated a lot of like clinical research into it, and we ended up winning it. And I basically told her about that. And so she was like, oh, so you got some artistic ability. And I was like, a little bit. I definitely wasn't the main head artist, but, she seemed to feel that story. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, she actually kind of felt that story. I think I told it pretty well. But that one threw me for a loop. But I think that's a good question. And then she asked, okay, name your 3 biggest creative attributes. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I basically tell her about YouTube, not about the clinical research YouTube stuff. I tell her about my other stuff. And I was telling her like, yeah, I do like a lot of like video production. I put them on YouTube. So like anytime I travel someplace, I like to make videos. And then she said 3, but basically I said, yeah, so you've got to like color grade the videos. You've got to like edit them. You've got to like make sure the sound is good. And so that's what I use for all 3. I was like, that counts for all 3. And I think she liked that too, but man. And then I think that was pretty much the last question. And she was like, okay, that's our 30 minutes. And that was like music to my ears. Like, I was like, oh my God, thank God this is over. 30 minutes went by. And actually it ended up, it was actually longer than 30 minutes. It was like 45 when I was looking at the number, but I think I was on there early. I was probably on there pretty early. It said 45 minutes. So I was probably on there about maybe 8-9 minutes beforehand. So that's good that it kind of went longer now that I'm thinking about it. And then she was like, do you have any questions for me? I don't want to like take too much of your time. So I asked her a couple of my questions. And actually she started off the interview was like, hey, do you have any questions that weren't answered for you by the other people? And I asked her about CRA burnout and how that's managed. That's like if you want to have a long career in clinical research, that's something you definitely want to, think about. And, I think that's a pretty thoughtful question because that's like a big topic kind of in clinical research. So that was good. So I asked her my couple questions there and then this part was weird. I asked her, I was like, so if I have any other questions that come up between now and, the end of the week, can I email them to you? And, would you be okay with me emailing you? And she says, no. I'm like, what? Every other person, all 5-6 other people I interviewed with gave me their email address without hesitation. When I went on site, they gave me their whole business card. And I thought this was interesting because when the recruiter sent out her name, she only sent her first name. She didn't send her first and last name, which was weird. But her name was interesting. So if I really wanted to find it, I'm sure I could find it on LinkedIn. But every other time they sent out names, it was always first and last name. But with this lady, it was only the first name. So that was weird. And then she goes into some spiel about how, the process is to send it through the recruiter, and then the recruiter will direct it on to whoever needs to hire it, et cetera, whoever needs to see it, et cetera, et cetera. So whatever. And I'm kind of like disappointed at this point because, how am I going to send my thank you letter or my thank you note after the interview? I'm like, dang, how am I going to do that? So, I eventually get off the phone. I tell her it was really nice meeting her. It was really nice. It was a nice pleasure. And I think we had a, good conversation and, take care. And she's like, it was really nice meeting you too. And, wish you best of luck in the process. And so at this point, this is after the interview, so not really sure how it's going to happen. I should know in the next few days. So we'll do another video on that, on how that ends up going. So you guys don't know, and I don't know how it ends up going. You could probably guess because this is coming out later, but we'll see. I mean, I guess you guys won't know if it's the first, second, or third interview I go on where I become a CRA. So I guess that'll be interesting. And I guess it'll be interesting for me looking back. But yeah, man, so that's the last interview. Cross my fingers. She said they're all going to, I guess, sit in a room. I doubt they'll sit in a room and spend a lot of time on this, but they're going to decipher and discuss who they're going to hire. I learned that they're going to bring in one CRA internally and that they're looking to hire one externally. Now, if you just think about all the time that they spent on me, 2-3 hours out of a whole day, all those people I interviewed with, all that time I took out of their schedule, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'm like one of the top candidates. So keep your fingers crossed for me. Hope me sharing this process and documenting this process has been helpful for you guys. You guys are right around the corner. If you're looking to get into clinical research, I mean, you're only a couple of years away from this process, so, or less. Who knows what it's going to be like during when, in the future, whenever this is released. Who knows what the process is going to be like. But dang, man, it's crazy. So hopefully this was helpful. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Like, share, subscribe. I'm out.